Okay, no sharing screen. And... All right, so we are going to be live. All right, this is Relaxed Teams, and we're here with our weekly with our lunch and learn for the month of, what month are we in? March. And this month we're featuring marriage. And to kick it all off, we have a wonderful organization, highly recommended, Prevention Links. So to get it all started, do you want to introduce exactly what your organization does, and Morgan, and who you are within the organization?
My pleasure. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. My name is Morgan Thompson. I'm the CEO of Prevention Links. We're a nonprofit organization based in Union County, New Jersey, but serving the central region of New Jersey. Our focus is really around preventing the development of substance use disorders, helping people to make informed choices about their health and how they want to engage with alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, and supporting individuals and families on the journey of recovery. Our work is with individuals, again, to link them to any supports and services that they may need to initiate and sustain their recovery journey. And so we can help get people connected to treatment. And we also have peer recovery specialists, who are individuals who are in recovery themselves, who have walked the path, who can walk it alongside with individuals who are new in their process. We also work directly with families. Sometimes the individual who is, experiencing an addiction isn't yet ready to seek help, and the family member very much wants them to. And so we work with the family member to help them to communicate more effectively with their loved one, to help them to build that motivation to seek help, and also to make sure that they're really taking care of themselves along the journey. Our motto is everyone knows someone, help prevent the next one. And so anyone who's listening today likely knows someone who's either struggling directly with addiction or who loves someone who's struggling directly with addiction. And so we ask that you get informed about our organization. You can visit us online at preventionlinks.org. You can follow us on Facebook or on Instagram to learn more about the services we provide, all of which are free to the individuals and families we serve. We are grant funded through a variety of sources, and so there's no cost to participate in the programs we offer. We work with youth, we work with adults, we work with seniors. So please don't hesitate, again, to reach out to us to learn more about what we do. We are seeking volunteers to help us advance our mission. We're seeking corporate sponsors to help sustain our programming into the future. Prevention Links has been around for 50 years, and we're working on the next 50, making sure we can make our impact double and triple what it was, because we know that with the pandemic, the need for our services has grown exponentially. And so we're trying to scale the work we do to meet that need. And we hope that you'll join us in being a part of that. So again, preventionlinks.org, that's links with an S. You can see the logo behind me. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you so much for your time and for having me.
Oh, no, and definitely, we think that from this topic in particular, you have your organization, I'm sure, can really help in making and breaking a marriage. And you have another minute or so. You want to talk about the families and the impact it has had, and things that you've been able to do?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, so much of the time, when a family is experiencing an addiction, that individual becomes alienated, right? Whether the journey ends in divorce, children are maybe not wanting to spend time with the parent who's had the addiction. Our programs work to bring the family together. We have a real focus around how do we create opportunities for families to connect. Throughout the region, we have what are called family success centers, and those aren't just for families that have been impacted by addiction. They're for anyone. And so we have parenting classes there, but we also have a lot of different activity groups, again, totally free, where parents can come either together or with their children to engage in cooking classes, game nights, just a safe place to be and connect as a family and connect with other couples and families. So, that's kind of the family success centers that we offer. And then we work one-on-one with families. Again, not therapy. That's not what we do. Peer support. how is this affecting your marriage? How is this affecting your relationship with your children? How do you want to, maybe change the way you relate to substances, whether that's you're quitting drinking, whether that's you're drinking less, or you want to quit smoking, whatever it may be. Work on that peer-to-peer basis to help you first heal your relationship with what that looks like with the substances, but also heal the relationships in your life that may have been impacted by your addiction or your substance use. So yes, a lot of families that we work with are spouses coming to us, hey, my husband or wife is not willing to stop drinking or using substances. What do I do? And the healing can really start from there.
Excellent. So wonderful to know that there's an organization like that out there, and we'll do our best to help spread the word.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. And with that, I'm going to turn everything over to Paul, our MC for today. Paul, you want to take it away?
Sure. Thank you, Dennis. And thank you, Morgan. Appreciate all the information about your organization. That's great. All right. So today we'll be talking about marriage, getting in and out of marriage. So we have 4 panelists here with us, and let's start with you, Marissa. In a couple of minutes, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for having me. So my name is Marissa Del Moro. I'm a partner at Lyons and Associates. We are a family law firm based in Somerville and in Morristown, New Jersey. And our firm's motto is your lighthouse in the storm, because we believe that we can meet clients where they are and carrying them through any sort of tumultuous times that they are experiencing. So I am a certified matrimonial law attorney in the state of New Jersey, which basically means I've been designated by our state Supreme Court as an expert in the area of family and matrimonial law. But for purposes of today, for the topic getting in and out of marriage, I'm going to talk about 2 things that I hope the panel and our audience thinks of when we're talking about marriage, getting in and out: prenuptial agreements and divorce. So those are the 2 topics I'll be talking about today. And I will just preface it by saying that I am licensed only in New Jersey. So whatever legal issues or law that I talk about is going to be strictly New Jersey based, just so our audience is aware of that. So prenuptial agreements. I think there tends to be a misconception that prenuptial agreements are specifically reserved for those in high asset cases, with millions of dollars in assets, but that's really not the case. I mean, basically, anyone entering into a marriage can enter into a prenuptial agreement if it's something that both partners want to do. For New Jersey specific, there are certain requirements that have to be met. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but a lot of it has to do with full and complete financial disclosure of both parties' assets and liabilities, obviously a willingness to enter into any terms. Prenuptial agreements in New Jersey, they can't contain any terms that would basically waive any sort of child support or deal with custody and parenting time. That cannot be done, but generally anything else can be addressed in a prenuptial agreement.
Okay, and I'm actually gonna ask you to stop just for a moment here. First, we'll kind of go around and really make the introductions of the others, and then I know you have a lot of great information, so. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
That's okay, great. I like the excitement. All right, next up on my screen, Pastor Dan. If you'd like to introduce yourself a little bit, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me again. Really enjoy our last conversation. It's been a year ago, I think. So I'm Daniel Fank. I'm pastor of a bilingual church called Camino de Fe Lutheran Church in Bernardsville and Somerville. I've been a pastor for about 10 years, and I have helped many couples understand what marriage is all about from God's perspective, right? From the perspective of the creator of heaven and earth. And so he created us and knows what's best for us. And since he instituted marriage, I think it's good to pay attention to what he has to say about it. And so that's kind of one of the things that I do is when someone wants to get married, we do pre-marriage counseling where we meet about six times before marriage, and it's mainly just to help them understand what God has to say about it. I've been married for 17 years to my wife Jerusha. We have 3 children, 14, 9, and 4, and try to my purpose is try to help people understand marriage from God's perspective and understand God's love for humanity. So.
Okay, great. Well, thank you and welcome. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah.
All right, Desiree. Same question to you. A little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
So my name is Desiree Halleck, and I'm the owner of a marketing agency in New Jersey called Clarence Services. We help startups and small businesses realize that they don't have to boil the ocean to have an effective and affordable marketing plan to grow their businesses. And I am on this panel because I was recently divorced, separated 2 years ago, divorced in December. And I will be just giving insights on sort of, my perspective on divorce and marriage. And I do have 2 little kids, 10 and 8. So of course they are very much impacted by the entire experience. And yeah, that's about it.
Okay, great, thanks. And last but not least, Drew Draney. How about yourself?
Thank you, Paul. Drew Draney, and I am a business consultant in the financial and health and wellness space. I'm an owner of a franchise. We do independent cost reduction consulting for businesses. And I also am an independent affiliate with a biotech company that helps the body age healthy. I also have a book coming out in the summer, Self-Help for Men. And the content, I would say I became an expert in this field of in and out of marriage starting in May of 2000 when I got married. And so 22 years experience of it. I am divorced now. We were separated in 2015, divorced in 2018. And I do have 3 children. They are now 16, 18, and 20 years old. They were only, 9, 11, and 13 when I was separated. So it definitely has had a huge impact on them, not just at the time it was happening, but most definitely right now. So.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks for coming. And, just to kind of follow up on that, it had the big impact then. They were much younger. And then now with their ages, teenagers and above, what kind of effects are you talking about?
Well, I've seen, we talk about post-traumatic stress. We've seen changes in their behavior and some of the stuff deep-rooted. And so in the process, my ex-wife and I, we co-parent well. That was the one thing that the mediator said is that when any other topic came up in mediation, we were like leaning forward at each other. When the topic of the kids came up, she said she noticed us visually shoulders drop and work together. In that journey in the last 7 years, we have helped give the kids as much support and resources as we could. And as recent as 3 months ago, each one of them, certain things are now coming out that they had in the back of their mind or in the subconscious that they've matured and been comfortable enough in a safe space to kind of put their emotions and articulate them into words. And we're hoping this healing process will help them.
Thank you. Pastor Dan, since easy question, relax. When you were talking about marriage, the eyes of God, your family and all, what's one big insight to start with that you would like to, kind of bestow upon us, either, getting into, which is, I think a lot of times we think about with clergy like yourself, as well as getting out of?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So, oftentimes people want to know the secret to a happy marriage, right? and
Yes,
everybody
yes, do tell.
and everybody has different ideas, right? Marrying your best friend, it's a good thing, marrying someone who's attractive, that's also should be included in that. Marrying someone who makes you laugh, it's people have different ideas, but I think from God's perspective and for what God has for humanity is forgiveness, right? And that's the ability to forgive and to be able to give someone a second chance. Now, please don't get me wrong, that there are circumstances where there is abuse, and we talked about it this a while ago, but I also mentioned it in my congregation and to people. There's circumstances, obviously, where things need to be, people need to have their own ways, but I think ultimately it's forgiveness, to wake up every morning and regardless of your spouse's faults and shortcomings, you get up every morning and says, I'm gonna love you, even I'm gonna be with you, even if all those things are in between. And so, I usually mention that at the beginning of the marriage, but also I think it helps as things progress and 10 years, 15 years ago pass by, and ultimately God's purpose is reconciliation, right? Not just reconciling God with humanity, but also us with one another. And so I think that's one of the things that I try to help people understand and try to live it out myself as well, because it's just one of those things that it's constant work, constant thing that you have to remind yourself almost every day, that we need to have this ability to forgive and to forgive a lot.
Forgiveness is a big part of marriage, so I agree with that. And Marissa, a lot of times people think of family law, divorce attorneys, right? It's all bad. And I know you love working on, the initial getting into marriage, also with adoptions and those kind of things. Right. So if you want to, take a moment and speak about those with us.
Sure. Just jumping off of what Pastor Dan is talking about as far as reconciliation, I do want to say that even though, we are divorce attorneys, if spouses can exhaust all options before actually filing for divorce, that's certainly something that we would encourage, whether it's through counseling, whether it's meeting with your Pastor Dan or someone like Pastor Dan. That's certainly something that we encourage, because we don't want to break up an intact marriage that should remain intact. But yes, to answer your question, Paul, we do adoptions. I like to joke, that's one of the only happy things I get to do sometimes. But certainly, I've done recently a lot of step-parent adoptions, adult adoptions. I met with a woman yesterday who wanted to basically readopt her daughter that was adopted internationally and just have her have an American birth certificate. So it is something that people understandably don't necessarily think about when they hear a family law attorney, but it is something that we do. So Thank you, Paul, for that question.
Yeah, sure. Happy to ask questions. Desiree, so kind of what insights would you like to share at this moment, kind of based on what others have talked about or something else at the moment?
Yeah, I'm just going after Marissa and what she said. If you don't have to get a divorce, please don't. It is the absolute most awful process you can go through. And I didn't fight. We didn't have lawyers. We had one lawyer who processed our divorce just because we didn't know what to do with the courts and everything. And so we literally got a friend's divorce papers every single night after the kids went to bed. We sat down together and we replaced all the words in this 30-page document. And it took about a month, and it was just awful. I mean, you talk about in the case of death, What happens with the kids and your insurance, life insurance policies? And there's just so many details, like who pays for college, and like, what if the kid drops out of college? Then what happens? Like, just all of these things that you are not ready to talk about yet, but you have to go through. And it's really just, it's like mourning a loss, but the person's in front of you. And it's just awful, especially when kids are involved. But again, we didn't fight. He refused to leave the house. It had been bad for 5 years, but so we tried, we went to counseling, we did everything we could. But he refused to leave, and he would have been miserable for the rest of his life because his parents were married for 40 years, miserable for their lives. Whereas I came from a divorced family where they're happy now divorced and they're friends. And so it's just two different perspectives, and neither one of them are right or wrong. But I never got married thinking I was going to get divorced. I was married for 12 years, together for 4 years before marriage. So, a big significant amount of my life I was married, and I just never thought it would happen. But it's still 2 years out, and I've moved on. I have a new significant other, and it still is painful. And I'm the one who initiated everything. So if you don't have to do it, don't do it. And the, next piece of advice is don't fight over things or money. You can make more money. You can buy more things. And the kids, like, we're 50-50 for our kids, in terms of custody. And, our kids are pretty resilient, but with COVID and all this other stuff that's going on in the world, I think it just like double and triple impacted everybody. I left a vice president job to start out my own company 2 months before I left. So just like a huge amount of adjustment for the entire family. And I left and just said, you can have it all. I just want my peace. And peace, you cannot buy peace for any amount of money. And I'm happy the way things, turned out. I feel a whole bunch of relief now. And the lawyer who helped us process the divorce said that in 20 years of her career, she has never, ever had such a peaceful couple divorce each other in New Jersey. So I feel good about that, but it was still absolutely the worst thing ever. So if you don't have to get divorced, don't. I'm done.
Right. So if I can follow up a question on that without getting too personal, and if you don't want to answer this, please I respect your privacy. You start out by saying, don't get a divorce if you have to. It seemed like you were in an unhappy situation for a long time. How do you know, or how did you know that, what, enough is enough? This is the time when I do need to dissolve the relationship.
Yeah. A comment was made, amongst other comments, that probably in the grand scheme of things, I feel like it's accumulation of a whole bunch of things. And sometimes it's a tiny little insignificant minor thing that might just be that straw that broke the camel's back. And that's how it was for me. It was like, holy, I can't do this anymore. And so it was just a comment. It was a comment that was made that was disrespectful. And I just thought, oh my God, why am I doing this to myself? I don't have to be here. I don't have to put up with this for the rest of my life. And it was getting worse and worse and worse. And I think the problem was that, and he made a comment one day and he said, I'm the same person I was 15 years ago. And I said, that's your problem. Your problem is we never evolved together. I've done so much growth internally as a human being, personally and professionally. And he wasn't there along that ride for me. And I wanted him to be. And I asked him to be my teammate, support me. And I was along for the ride throughout his career, trying to get tenure. He was a professor of chemistry and trying to get tenure at a university for 7 years of 7 days a week. And I felt like a single parent with the colic children at home. And, it was just like, I was there for you, but you weren't there for me. And I know this is going a lot longer than what you anticipated, Paul, but yeah, okay. It was just a minor comment that I was like, okay, I'm done. So it built up.
Yeah, I'm not a licensed therapist, so I have no answers for anybody. Marissa, you've been nodding your head in agreement with some of the things Desiree has said. And you also said, exhaust your options. When folks come to you, like, what's the process that you work with them to either make it finalized or get them back, or how do what do you do?
So for our initial intake, the way I like to approach it, I just let them talk, because you can tell when you meet with someone initially, are they bursting at the seams to talk? Or are they a little bit more reticent? So get an idea, use your, perception skills and get an idea of how they're coming into the appointment. Getting the basic facts: how long have they been married for? Do they have children? How many? How old are they? What are their immediate concerns? And a lot of times it's purely just information gathering and providing advice, which is perfectly fine. Some people are ready to pull the trigger, some aren't. It's not uncommon for us to have a consult see us on one day and then come back 6 months to a year later. That's perfectly fine, and that's perfectly normal. So it's really just a lot of information gathering, answering questions, providing advice, and we let the consult take it from there, whether they want to come back, if they have additional questions, and whenever they're ready, we certainly make the space for them to come back.
Okay. And I think that kind of will dovetail into Pastor Dan, the idea of listening, consulting, advising. So how would you say you differ then sort of from the legal standards or restrictions, or just the process that someone like Marissa follows? Is it the same, or is it very different?
Wait, sorry, are you asking me? Sorry. Are you asking me, Paul? Or
yeah. So how do you deal with couples that come to you either before wondering if marriage is right for them, or as a married couple and they're not sure they want to continue as a married couple?
Yeah. So yeah, we go through what love is, right? And you probably, some of you heard the famous 1 Corinthians 13, love is patient, love is kind. And one of the points that I try to make is that when the Bible talks about love, it's not a set of feelings, right? It's not those butterflies that you feel in your belly when you see the person you love. Actually, when God talks about love, it's a set of actions. It's love is patient, love is kind. It's not like, oh, I feel patient today, right? You can't really do that. You had to be patient. And I think it goes both ways. I think it was Saray was saying, right? That it has to be both ways. Love is patient, it's kind, it has both ways. It's not rude, it's not resentful, it doesn't do wrong. In other words, love is sacrificial, and it both goes ways. And God has given us the greatest example of this sacrificial love when Jesus came into the world and gave his life so that we would not be condemned. And so he put our needs before his needs, right? He knew what he needed to do, and he gave himself for us, not even asking us if we wanted that. And so he given us the greatest example of love, helps us understand what love is. And so from then on, we go, there are obviously circumstances where things don't work out. And then we ask them to talk to a professional beyond that point. But like I said, my point is to try to help them understand what it is that God wants for the relationship. But also, I think it's important to help people understand that even though God created marriage and meant for it to be forever, but that was at creation, right before Adam and Eve fell into sin, which helps us understand that we live in this sinful world, that we live in this world where, well, things are not always going to work out. I mean, my marriage, there's something that we need to work on constantly, right? One of the things that I always use is, I don't know if you heard it, Ben Affleck, a couple of years ago, he was at at a award show, and he was thanking everybody, and then he said, "The essence of our marriage is work." You know, and then everybody was upset. Wow, how can you say marriage is work? But if you really think about it, I mean, it is. It is giving up yourself every day, and it is being patient, and it's being kind, and it's not being arrogant, it's not being resentful, it's being sacrificial. So it is work, but there are circumstances where things don't work out, and we help people understand that it's okay, and there is forgiveness after a marriage that is broken. There is forgiveness for someone who gets divorced. There is forgiveness for all that. I mean, obviously, children get affected. My parents got divorced, and it was horrible. I mean, Desiree, kudos for what you've done, but man, I mean, ours was tough, and but there is forgiveness for that. There is love after that. After a marriage has been dissolved, there is hope, and that's what we're trying to help people understand as well. Sorry if I went over.
No need. And, as not to speak for Desiree, but Desiree, you mentioned that your parents were divorced and now they get along great, right? So different circumstances, different things.
They had restraining orders against each other back then, which I didn't know about until my adult life. But time heals all wounds. It really does. Like, you might hate the person later on. They literally spend every Christmas together, every family birthday party with their significant others. So yeah, it's a really nice, harmonious kind of relationship now. So.
Good. And Drew, you've mentioned before how, times are tough and it was difficult, and now that you're apart, what advice or information can you share at this point with that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing I would say is mindset is everything. And my mindset now is completely different from my mindset in April of 18 when the divorce was final, which was completely different from my mindset when we separated in 2015, and completely different from my mindset when we got married in May of 2000. So mindset is everything. And, I want to reach back to the prenuptial thing you mentioned. And also, when you're getting married, you're not thinking you're ever going to get divorced, because it's about mindset. So the prenuptial thing, I personally would never have thought of any kind of prenuptial thing in my first ever marriage, because you're not thinking that when you get married, So the thought isn't that. The initial thought I would have if I was thinking about a prenuptial is like, oh, maybe I'm not feeling secure that this marriage is going to work. So you talk about prenuptial before you even get married. Wouldn't even have thought of broaching that subject. And I can't say that retrospectively I would, because I'll be the first to say right now in this mindset, I would never change 1 second of my past, of my life, because if you change 1 second, I wouldn't be here talking with you guys right now. Sure. Things happen for a reason. So that would be my first thing. My second thing would be about the importance of managing expectations. And managing expectations early on is something I didn't do, and I don't think my ex-wife did. One thing that I've in talking to people who have had strong marriages or are working at their marriages, many have had relationship therapy while they're dating. And I thought it was very interesting. That's something I would never have thought of, but they do that because when you meet somebody, they'll have their pet peeves, and they have their little quirks and idiosyncrasies. And in the beginning, you're like, oh, that's cute, that's funny. But after a while, if it's not addressed, if it's really bothering you, resentment could set in. So if you're able to kind of hash out these small little things that could turn into big things, like Desiree said, the straw that broke the camel's back, addressing that stuff early and managing expectations, I think is so important. Because I believe, and actually Desiree and I spoke about this stuff yesterday, that we believe that any kind of conflict in any kind of relationship is due to misalignment in expectations between the two parties. Because if one person expects one thing and the other person expects another, you have this alignment gap. And if there's that kind of misalignment, it's hard to succeed in any kind of relationship. So I would say manage expectations early on and communicate often. And the last thing I would mention is about communicating. I don't believe there's any such thing as no communicating. You either communicate effectively or ineffectively. And in essence, avoidance is a form of communication. And that was the method that my wife at the time and I used, because we both didn't really like conflict. And I was walking on eggshells because if I didn't say something tactfully enough, it would end up in a discussion that wouldn't be pleasant. So mindset, managing expectations early on, communicate effectively and consistently, and nothing wrong with early relationship therapy to get rid of all the little things that might be big things later on.
Yeah, so I may have missed it, but I find it interesting that it was about, here we are like 35 minutes into it, and communication was, I think this was the first time somebody mentioned it, but everybody did allude to it, right? So communication is always going to be a key part of that.
Paul, can I say something about that?
Yeah.
So what I learned, I read this book. Well, I read many books while we were, in the decision-making process and whether to separate or not. And one book was called, I Love You, But I'm Not in Love with You. And I think this comes from not dating each other. Your kids come in your life, and we are both Canadian. So all of our families are in Canada. So we lived in New Jersey alone, had no support at all. And it was like, we never ever dated again. Right. It was like, that was it. So then for the last 10 years, we never went for dinner. We never did anything. So this book, what it did was, I wish I read it, 8 years ago, but it's, at least I have the insight now. But what it did is it really it touched upon the languages of love. And I know there's a book called The 5 Languages of Love or whatever, but we're not all the same. And I know that everybody thinks that men are from Mars, women are from Venus, all of these books that I'm referencing, but it's so true. We think differently. And if my language of love is like receiving words of affirmation or affection, or it might be gift giving, whatever, it doesn't mean that your spouse enjoys those same things. And so if you communicate, you can learn what your spouse expects or what they want and what makes them happy. And then you tell them what makes you happy, but don't assume that they like the things that you like, because we are all individuals. We are all different. And communication, like learning the styles of communication. My ex was an avoider, just like what Drew just said. He avoided all conflict. So nothing was ever resolved, and then it bottles up. And that's not very good, because then there's an explosion at the end, which is probably what happened with us. But I really think that if you learn that, he needs 24 hours before discussing a topic you're fighting about or arguing about, then I can respect him enough, because he's my spouse, to give him that 24 hours, as long as he respects me enough that I want to discuss it after that time period when we're cooled down. So these are things that I've learned now after reading these books when it was too late. But it's a really good thing to know the style of communication of your spouse compared to your own. Because you don't have to be on the same page. You just have to respect and understand it. And then it will work a lot better.
Yeah, I did great. Well, very well said, Desiree. I say that we have to be on the same page. We have to be reading the same book.
Yes.
And another thing I also think often about is, I used to live by the golden rule. And think about what the golden rule is. Do unto others as you would want done unto yourself. So exactly what Desiree said, not everybody likes it that way. So I don't live by the golden rule anymore. I live by the platinum rule. Do unto others as they would want done unto themselves. And how do you ask them. And so it's exactly what Desiree is talking about. If I had lived by the platinum rule, I'm not saying it was all my fault. I mean, I wasn't the one who wanted the divorce. She did. If you're always thinking about do unto others as they would want done unto themselves, you're always asking them, what do you want? There's part of your managing the expectations. So I think that's very, very important to actually really respect the other people's feelings and viewpoints.
Mm-hmm. All right. So with all of that said, and there was a lot that was discussed here, Pastor Dan, what's one thing that you'd like people to take away and remember?
Yeah. And it kind of goes to what everybody was saying, and I think it goes to, marriage is work. It's constantly learning about myself and about the other person. It's also learning about what God has to say about me and about my relationship with the world, right? And how He wants us to show that love. Yeah, I think that's one of them. And the other one is, even in any stage of a relationship, forgiveness, right? I think I go back to that, because especially in today's world where, we don't like something, we cancel it, right? We don't give anyone a second chance anymore. And so I think there's that point where God is giving us more than the second, third chances, and we just need to be forgiving and give a second chance as well.
Okay. Desiree, I know you've got some ideas. What's the one thing, just one, not the 4 or 5 love languages, not the.
Oh, I don't know. I have 3 really quick ones. Can I do 3 really quick ones?
All right. So I asked for 1. Pastor Dan gave me 2. You're going to go with 3. Everybody else, that's it. 3 is the max. 3 is the max. Go ahead. What do you got?
Okay. So the first thing, because my therapist told us both when we were in therapy during this process, expectations ruin relationships. And I know Drew touched upon this a little bit. So if you just ponder that phrase, expectations ruin relationships. Don't stop dating each other when you're married. It's like just what Dan said. It's all about maintenance and work. Relationships aren't there to just be left like a plant to grow. Even if it is, you still have to nurture that plant. You got to water it and give it sunlight, right? So water and give your relationship sunlight by dating each other. And time heals all wounds. Divorce is like an awful, awful thing. And, but still time, every single day gets better and you get stronger and you heal. So that would be my takeaways.
Okay. Now, nobody's asked me, but because I'm MC, I'm going to take some liberties since you mentioned this plant, Desiree. Plant needs, to be tended to. With my wife, we met, we had our first date, and then I actually had to travel away for a week for work. While I was away, I sent her a plant, through the florist, and it was a little terrarium, is that the word? Right, live plants. And I told her while I'm gone, she had to take care of it because if the plants die, we're through. So here we are,
So much pressure.
24 years later. I like to tell people, we don't have any kids, we don't have any pets. We have one plant, and it's that same plant.
That's awesome.
And we see it every day in the kitchen. So
love it.
Yeah, that's that. Marissa, what's one thing that, or 2 or 3, or, what do you want people to take away with to remember about this whole topic, getting in and getting out?
Well, I certainly appreciate Drew's, emphasis on managing expectations. I mean, that's something I tell clients every single day, to manage their expectations, particularly throughout the divorce process, because every process is different. Everyone's journey is different. I also want to take away to be transparency, right? If you're going to enter into a marriage, you're going to need to be transparent. If you're going to sign a prenuptial agreement, you're going to need to be transparent about what your income, assets, liabilities are. The same thing when you're getting divorced. You're going to need to be transparent about any sort of liabilities that are occurring. You're going to need to be transparent about, are you truly able to parent in a manner in which you are seeking as far as a schedule goes? So that's certainly something that I would like the audience to think about. But thank you again.
No, thank you. And last but not least, Drew.
All right, I got 3. Now, Desiree mentioned about time heals all wounds. With all due respect, I don't think it does. What I think happens is what time does, it adds some layers above the wound, and layers and layers and layers. So the wound is always there. It's never healed. It may take longer to penetrate to have that wound be painful again. But I think you always need to know that that wound is there. So if there were mistakes, you don't repeat the mistakes, or if it's learned life lessons that are learned. So I understand what you're saying, Desiree. For me, I just think the wounds are always there. It's just that, after time, maybe calluses develop over those wounds. The second thing is about not losing yourself in a marriage. I totally lost myself because, when we met, we were two individuals, so individuals who have independence. And what I did and what she did, and I don't even thought about it, is we kind of let our friends go and all this stuff, and it was us, right? And we did everything together. And in talking to friends afterwards, after the divorce, and my head's a little clearer, ones who were still married and happy, they never gave up their independence. So, one of my friends, she still does her girls' night out, and the guy still does his poker night throughout their entire marriage. Yet they do stuff together. So you don't have to have an either or. I think my wife and I, we did an either or kind of thing. Don't do an either or. Keep your independence and also be a couple. And the third thing is, and I wrote this the other night, this is one of the things that should be in my book, but this is like the 20th iteration, but when it comes to writing the book of love, it's important to involve the heart as a key contributor. It's imperative to entrust the brain as the editor. Too often, decisions are made with emotion, without thinking. And it's very difficult when you're in the heat of the moment to have the heart and the head talk. One of my goals and passions in life, when my book comes out and I'm helping men in these situations, I want me now in that mindset, be able to help those men who were the Drew 7 years ago and give them the tools that I didn't have, so they can have those tools in the heat of the moment to shorten the grief cycle. So those would be my three things, Paul.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. If you'd like to give us how can people get in contact with each of you? If you'd like to do that, we can kind of go through the list. So Drew, since you just finished speaking, how can people get in contact with you if they'd like?
Absolutely. That's a very good question. I'll give my cell phone number. All right. 201-739-2464.
Okay. Thank you.
Call me, text me, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody.
Pastor Dan.
Yes, my website, danfenco, DANFENCO.com, right? danfenco.com. That should be it.
Okay. Marissa?
So mine's a little bit different just because we are required under law to run a conflict check before I can speak with someone. So I would suggest that everyone just call our office at 908-575-977, and we can get that going. So thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. Great. And Desiree?
Yep. So I have a website, clarantservices.com, and that's CLAIRANT services.com. And my phone number is 973-507-6980.
Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody coming, sharing your insights. I think this was a great discussion. I'd like to say one of the better ones, but like children, there are no favorite children, but we know the real truth. All right, everybody, thank you very much. I appreciate it and have a wonderful day. Thanks for coming.
Everyone.
Thank you very much.